All right, we are live on the pod this week. We've got a great guest this week, Morgan Lucas. Morgan, why don't you give folks a little intro for yourself? Maybe some of the stuff you do with WordPress and maybe some of the stuff you do outside of WordPress too.
Well, hi everybody. My name is Morgan Lucas. First, thanks for having me here, Joe. And second, what I do on WordPress is occasionally I will open it up, I will look around, I will say this web page looked different 2 weeks ago, and then I will close it and just kind of move on. So normally what I do is work on a lot of different technical things, just because I like putting my hand in things and seeing what works and what doesn't. And I also do consulting work for some companies. I'm looking to work with some major companies in the future. I've already done some in 2020, so that was pretty cool. And I blog about it on my blog, which is runtcpip.com. And I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's cool to have you. I, as someone who's like not as technical, I actually always really enjoy my conversation with technical folks because I get to learn a little bit more, even if I don't totally understand everything. I'm always trying to do a better job, because I do run a technical company. I want to make sure that I am somewhat up to speed on some of these things. Tell folks a little bit, maybe even more about the technical aspects of some of the work you do. Do you kind of like, I don't even know if this is the right question. Do you like specialize in certain like languages, or do you kind of prefer like more front end work or back end work? Where's your kind of like area that you like to play in when it comes to technical stuff?
So my area is basically network engineering and network administration, and that includes the cloud. Like most people, when you think of the cloud, they think, hey, it's Amazon AWS, which runs half the internet. But most of the time, I'm working in Microsoft Azure, and I'm learning about Google GCP and stuff like that, because the cloud is the future. Most of the things run in the cloud, but I can't get away without saying this, that the cloud is really just someone's computer. And so cloud technology is just an extension of in-person, hands-on physical networking. But I also do a lot of other
Yeah.
things. Just another thing I'm working on is a review of the Galaxy Beach that I got for Christmas, and that's going a bit slower than I thought it would, but it's still fun to go, oh, hey, I have to change 500,000 settings in Windows just to be able to talk to somebody with the microphone.
Yeah, I hear that. I'm always, I feel like I always have some content to write or update, and the list never seems to go away. There's always something on the list. But also, it was interesting what you're saying about the cloud. I think about the cloud when I'm using my, iPhone. I'm just kind of like, oh, I can have as many pictures as I want to on my phone, but I don't have to have the biggest saving space on my phone because I can just like have all my photos on the cloud. Like that makes it easier. But I think what you're saying to me is the cloud it sounds cool, but it's really just like a big Apple server that's holding all my photos. It actually is a computer and hardware that is holding all that. Is that somewhat correct?
Yeah, basically, it's just the cloud. There's also things like, imagine using, okay, how can I phrase this? If you're trying to do something on the internet, like, I gotta admit, if I knew I was going to talk about the cloud, I would have refreshed myself on this, because, like, see, like here, I'm going to use another example. So, I have an Amazon Alexa that I use sometimes. When I don't use it, I've probably just unplugged it, stuck it in a box somewhere. But whenever I talk to Alexa, it's going to take that stuff and it's going to kind of send it to Amazon AWS, and they have all these functions and other pieces of technology that will parse what I say, and then it will return what I asked for. Because 9 times out of 10, I'm saying, hey Alexa, play Paul Hardcastle Radio on Spotify. And I'm sorry if anybody's Alexa just started playing Paul Hardcastle Radio out there. So
nice, got him. Yeah. Okay. So I'm wrapping up my head around this, but most of it makes sense. And I think the cloud stuff is not something I have really like a super firm grasp on, but I'm always interested to learn more, especially just from people like you who know a little more than me. And yeah, sorry for the curveball. We always kind of go off on a few tangents on the show because someone says something really cool, and I'm like, oh, I want to talk about that more. And so it sounds like you do some work in this area. when I think about this work, I think about more like Fortune 500 companies, like bigger enterprise companies. Most of the consulting you're doing for like bigger companies, or do you maybe work with some smaller companies as well?
Oh, so there's a company, they actually reached out to me and they said, "Hey, we noticed that you use our stuff." And I was like, "Do you want to do some research for us for a week?" And I said, Sure, okay, I can put that on a resume." And then they said, "Well, no, you can't because you can't actually use our name." But it was like, but they said you can say
Ah,
that we are a major streaming service. So I'm like, okay, cool. So like that's close enough. And so when I did that, that just kind of opened the door to me really enjoying consulting work as opposed to working for a company like 9 to 5. Like I respect the people who do that, but honestly, most of the time I do most of my work from like 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. So I'm like, that just doesn't work with most people's business hours. And so if you give me the freedom to just do what I want to do, what I like to do, what I have to do around the clock, then I'm probably just going to have a great time working for you. And I understand that people have meetings and we got to go to meetings sometimes. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm using a desk here and I accidentally put my feet on and kicked the desk. So if I start wiggling over there in the corner, I'm like, okay, oops, sorry.
no worry. I'm always moving in my frame. People who watch on YouTube, they know I'm here and there. So
Yeah, so
all right, so like streaming stuff. So I I'd be interested to know like where does that intersection happen, because it sounds like you like to be a little bit more flexible with your schedule. I'm kind of the same way. I like to work when I like to work. I'm not really working when I'm not working. That's how I do things. For a streaming service, so what kind of work is going on from your perspective in terms of like some of the consulting stuff you do? Maybe you can't talk like about again like exactly who the company is, but like what kind of work happens from like 8 to 11 p.m. Consulting work for a streaming company? Like what kind of tech stuff's going on there?
okay, so this part was a little less tech, but a little bit more user friendly. Like, can you test our user
Cool.
interface? We want to see how you use this, and we want to hear any feedback you have.
Cool.
And so, since I listen to podcasts most of the time, but I'm trying to sleep, I know most people are like, "Oh, the pandemic." Since I'm not commuting anywhere. I don't listen to podcasts, and I'm here like, "Well, I just listen to go to sleep." And so they'll be like, "Hey, is there anything that our interface could have done better to make this a little easier for you to use podcasts?" Because they have started like buying a lot of podcast companies, which good for them because I see that. I'm not going to say that some of my suggestions were implemented because it was a few months ago and they could still very well be in development, but they were very interested in my feedback, how easy I found it to use the service to play podcasts. And so it was just a lot of user testing. How do you use this? Why do you use it like this? Is there something another company is doing that we could be doing? Like, should we buy them or should we just use what they use?
Yeah, we're a little bit more in my area of expertise now, which is more like user experience stuff. Yeah, I think a lot of that is so important, especially where like coming from someone like you who's probably used a bunch of different tools, like what's going to work and what's not going to work. So that kind of work sounds important for them. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about some of the technical blogging you do too, or just like the blogging in general. I think we talked a little bit before this, and it sounds like you're doing some blogging that's not as tech specific. So it sounds like you're doing maybe a little bit of both. But the thing I wanted to talk about first was we talked again offline, kind of before we started recording here. Last year, you were blogging once a week,
Yeah.
or I guess that was your goal, is to blog once a week. And this year, a lot of people saying, okay, what more can I do? What else can I do to get in front of people, grow my audience, that kind of stuff. You are taking the opposite approach or a different approach. You're actually stepping back a little bit and blogging a little less frequently. I thought that was super interesting. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and kind of the reason behind that.
So I'm basically on social media, I'm basically stepping back from a lot of things, not only from blogging, and I still enjoy blogging. It's just quality over quantity. I'm not going to say the work I was putting out once a week was bad, but I do realize that it was pretty short. And at that point, you can just add things to a post over time, keep it in the drafts, and then push it out. So when people see that it's a new post, they get really excited because there's something they can sink their teeth into. Also, in pulling back on social media, because I was on LinkedIn and I'm still on LinkedIn. If you want to connect with me, just tell me where you're from, because people don't, and I'm like, hey, stranger. So like
Yeah.
like sometimes they say that you have to post once a day on LinkedIn to be in front of the algorithm, and I thought, you know what? nah, I don't feel like that. So I'm gonna post like 2 or 3 times a week, but it's just not going to be something. I'm trying to say this diplomatically. It's not going to be something boring and businessy. That's about as diplomatic as
Yeah.
I can get it. Like, I will just post something like, "Hey, I just totally made an HTML, CSS, JavaScript gallery of the 4,500 Disney mugs that I own in my pantry. So come look at it." And I actually did that.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, it's more
Nice,
because
nice.
I got one right here where you can't quite see. I know I'm going on a tangent. I'm sorry, but I can't quite see it. But
This
it's
podcast is all about tangents. Let's go into it.
this is probably one of my favorite ones. It's like Hades 80s synthwave decals on the side,
Nice.
and
Ah, sick.
it's like so. It's just like, hey, I'm gonna make stuff that I like making, and I'm gonna play around with stuff that I like playing around with, and you can stick around for the ride. And a lot of people have stuck around, and I deeply appreciate that. It's like even people, because in our world, people are bombarded 24/7 with they're on TikTok. They are on TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. I am old at 28. I have no idea what the children are doing. So they're on TikTok. They're on Snapchat. They're everywhere. Like I use Twitter, LinkedIn, and a bunch of Slack communities, and that's about it. Like people are being bombarded. It's like the way to stand out is to not bombard somebody. Like let them come as they are, let them hang around for as long as they want to, and you don't always have to be in somebody's face. That's what I find the most difficult part about networking is. I don't want to be in your face. I just want to be paid and be left alone, and maybe make a friend or two down the road. Like I don't really being in someone's face all the time is not my style. That's why I'm a network engineer because I don't have to do that in theory. Like you still need to have people skills, but I'm not going to be on the stage or anything.
Yeah, I think that is one of the most important things anybody can learn about themselves is what you said about LinkedIn. It's like, okay, a lot of people are going to say that, okay, I read this thing about LinkedIn algorithm. I got to post once a day. Okay, I guess I'm going to go post once a day because I want to, whatever, expand my network. But you said, like, nah, screw that. Like, I'm going to do what I want to do. And that to me is like most important piece of anything that anybody does because I feel like people think I got to get everyone in my audience. I got to like grow this as fast as possible. I like to think about it more as there's like a popular book out there or just like concept about 1,000 true fans. I'm sorry, I can't like quote exactly who it's from or who thought of it, but it's the idea of like if you have like 1,000 true fans, you can do whatever you want to. You can actually like make a good living. You can do what you want to do instead of quote unquote what you're supposed to do, right? And you can have that audience of people like be the kind of people who want to follow you, Morgan, as opposed to the kind of people who may want to follow me, as opposed to the kind of people who may want to follow other people. You don't need 7 billion people to follow you. You need your 1,000 people, and you'll be happier probably if those 1,000 people are like people who you really like and you really wanted to connect with, and they are following you because of the genuine stuff you're doing, not because of the stuff you were supposed to do, quote unquote, because LinkedIn told you to, you know? So I think you're on the right track with that stuff.
Right. And people who are like, I'm trying to game the algorithm on LinkedIn. I'm like, dude, Microsoft owns LinkedIn. They probably change the algorithm every 5 minutes and nobody knows. So you might just want to give up right now.
Yeah, totally. We do a lot of content marketing, so like we're pretty dependent on Google for like sending us a lot of traffic to the WP Buffs blog, and yeah, same thing. They probably change your algorithm, 50 times a month, probably the micro changes all the time. And the thing what we can do, well, we can put out really good content. We can optimize and do that kind of stuff. But a lot of it is just like, do you have the best content out there? Are you answering people's questions? Are you adding value to people? So we really try to focus more on that and less on the like gamification of SEO stuff. So yeah, I'm with you. All right. So you have done a little blogging on, and correct me if I'm wrong, do you kind of keep your technical blogging onto your own website, which is just runtcpip.com, and the technical writing happens there, and then you have another blog where you write some not so technical stuff on Medium?
Sort of, kind of. Like I have exported some of my blog posts to Medium, and one of them was about,
Okay.
and I had originally written this on runtcpip.com. It was about the commercialization of Animal Crossing New Horizons. Like companies are buying copies of this game and making their stuff, and they're using it to advertise to people. And I'm like, And I wrote about that in July, and I just made my Medium blog in, I think, December. I was like, so it's about what I feel like writing. Sometimes I'll put it on both, sometimes I'll put it on neither. But I think I'm working on. Okay, so that was really long-winded to say. Yes, I am. I am trying to keep it technical on my blog, but I'm working on making it more accessible for people because I will go back and look at what I wrote, and I'm like, okay, I can barely understand this. How is the person with their CSIN going to understand this? I'm like, so I'm honestly trying to write to my audience to make sure that everybody's understanding. I'm like, and sometimes, yeah, I will post something like, yeah, I'm sorry. It seems like I'm trying to name drop all the stuff I've written about, but I'm just bringing up
Go
examples
ahead,
here.
name drop.
Yeah, because like,
Go for it.
because I remember, because another industry I feel is really interesting that I followed for years at this point is like movie marketing and the business of making movies and all that stuff. And so I actually wrote about that when Warner Brothers, they said, hey, we're still going to release Tenet in August 2020. Movie theaters who are closed be damned. We're going to release this movie because Christopher Nolan wants us to. So, and I wrote about that. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, cool. But funnily enough, I did not write about how Warner Brothers decided to put all their movies on HBO Max in 2021, along with a co-theatrical release. I probably should have written about that. I think at this point, it's been beaten and hammered to death. So I'll just write about what's interesting. And the key point of that is because I would like to work with Warner Brothers one day. I would like to work with Warner Media. That's why I care enough to write something like that. Like if it's about, I don't want to name companies here because all companies have fair points to them, and I don't want to put anyone on the spot like you're terrible. I'm not going to work for you. But if it's just an industry I don't care about, then I'm probably not going to keep an eye on their business. And if I don't keep an eye on their business, I'm not going to write about it because I just don't think it's interesting. But Warner Brothers is one of many companies I do think is genuinely interesting, and I would like to support them one day.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's really cool that you're thinking ahead. I think a lot of people have companies in their mind that are like, "Oh, that's a cool company that I want to work for one day," but they don't really know the procedure of like how would I get a job at like my dream company. And I like this idea of like doing some stuff on your own, writing about them, starting to do some blogging and like getting into that world with the tools you already have in your tool belt. I've hired a few people at my company who they were on my radar before I ended up hiring them. Like one is like I'm thinking about came from like some Twitter DMs and some stuff that happened on Twitter. One happened, I recently hired someone who like I've been talking to for like almost a year, on and off, not serious conversations the whole time, but like it happened. It doesn't have, you don't just like apply for a job and then a week later, like you have that job. Like a lot of times it takes time. And I think like getting into that world yourself is a good way to one, like potentially get noticed, but also even more than that, I think just like get into the world and learn more and maybe like meet some people who are connected to that space because someone read your article who like, oh, I know a person at Warner. Can I introduce you? You never know what'll happen. So I think like optimizing your luck maybe is how I think about it to like, hey, who knows what could happen in the future,
Yeah. It's just like another thing I do with people is I have a spreadsheet. It's not particularly organized, but it's a spreadsheet, and it has people at companies and industries that I would like to be in.
Nice.
You link to their LinkedIn, and you just check it maybe once a week. If they have a post, you like the post. You don't go all the way back and like every post from the past 5 years because not only is that insincere, it's creepy and it shows you don't know how to use your time very well because you could probably automate that, but either way, they're not going to know it's automated. It just looks weird. And so I've actually met quite a few people at like large companies like Warner Brothers, like Disney, like nope, that's just about it. I shouldn't have put that third one out there. But I met I have connected with people just because I hung around and genuinely liked what they had to say. Because there are some people they're gonna find every person who works at this company and they're gonna either follow them or try to connect with them, or they're gonna put them in a list and they're just gonna go down there and just like everything they say. And like that's not sincere. Like look, I'm one of those people who think that if you're capable and competent for a job, you should be able to be hired for it. You should be able to apply and be hired for it. Networking, I actually hate networking. I think it's insincere, phony, and it should be about your talent and not who you know. but I understand that's the world we live in, and unfortunately, we just have to play the game. But you can kind of play it on your own terms. You don't have to like everything that somebody posts. Like you can generally just find the people at a company that you like, the people that you like, not just the company, and you can just follow them. I was like, isn't it a lot better to like the people, to find people that you click with, even rarely or on occasion, and then just interact with their content, leave them a post, say congratulations, and actually mean it. If you don't mean it, don't say it. There's going to be other opportunities for you, so don't feel like you have to jump on the first one that comes around when it comes with interacting with somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I've in some ways I feel a lot like you do, and it's probably one of the reasons that I ended up in the WordPress space, because I feel like the WordPress space, it's a great community of people, friendly people who want to build something cool together in the form of open source software. And I feel like a lot of people don't like that networking vibe of like, here's my business card. Like you bring 100 business cards to a meetup and you got to hand them all out. And then like, that's what networking is. Like people in the WordPress space are not about that kind of networking. It's much more about like the community. And because everyone has that common feel, I feel like whatever the networking that happens in the WordPress space is a lot more genuine. It really is just like, most people who are like, again, like quote unquote in my network in the WordPress community are really just my friends. Like they're just people I like hit up with a Slack DM or like we'll shoot an email to like, hey, what's up? Like, how's your family? Like, how's everything during COVID? You doing okay? Like it's that kind of community, and that feels much better and much more genuine to me. So yeah, maybe like the pursuit of community over networking, or just, yeah, maybe like updating that vocabulary could also be helpful for people who are like feeling like you. Because I agree with you. I'm not like, I used to do that networking thing because I thought I had to. And it turns out like you really don't.
Yeah. I also hate the rhetoric of, well, what's in it for me if I help you? It was like, the fact that you help somebody get to live in a capitalist society and make money, that should be what's in it for you. I mean, I get to an extent that maybe you're not going to recommend somebody for a CIO job that you barely know. I get that. But who does it hurt for you to pass along a link to somebody? Like on Twitter, I actually follow somebody who works at this grocery company. I don't want to like drop here. I'm going to drop a name, and if they don't like it, I'm sorry. But at Zero Grocery, and it's in California, where they like have all these good products that it's like being a milkman, but it's with groceries. If that sounds kind of odd, it's like they'll send you things in glass containers. They'll send you things in glass containers to eliminate waste, and that's a really cool concept. If I lived in California, I would try it, but I don't. I live in Florida, so I actually sent a referral link that somebody had posted because I follow a recruiter on there, and I just stuck it in a Slack channel. I didn't know these people in the Slack channel. I just thought, hey, maybe you can do this because I know I can. I'm not. It was like, maybe you can do it. So if you want me to make an introduction to you, I totally will. And I actually did find like 2 or 3 people, and I let the recruiter know, and quite a few of them got interviews. Like it didn't hurt me to do that, and sure, nobody paid me for it, but who cares? Someone got helped.
Yeah, I think that's a good outlook. Not everyone has that outlook, but we could use more of it in the world, I think. And if you pass along enough goodness externally, you will get goodness back. You know, I know that it may not be something you're like, I'm doing a quid pro quo for or something like that, but if you put out good in the world, usually you get good back as well. So I'm with you on that. I wanted to dive more into the like Warner Brothers thing. Sounds like you're like really into movies. Obviously, like you're a technical person. That's kind of like your professional background, but you're really into movie stuff. I want to know like what would your dream job at Warner? Maybe not Warner Brothers. Warner Media is what I think you said it, but maybe like the movie side of things at Warner. What would be your dream job there? Is it more technical stuff? Like, is it in like their streaming department or like doing, engineering work for them, or is it maybe more like actual like movie stuff? I don't know.
Honestly, okay, fun fact. Before I decided on this background, I was about to set up this interview with my Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse poster because I have one in my room. And I know it's not Warner Brothers, but I was about to say, can I use, because I have like 5 or 6 movie posters in my room. And I was like, do I use this one, or this one? I was like, no, I'm just going to use this. Yeah. Honestly, I just
cool. I was admiring it.
I just like the idea of supporting like a movie company because movies have been a big part of my life for absolute ages. So the part of their company that I really again, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to advertise everything, but
Go for it.
Birds of Prey, I really loved Birds of Prey, and I wish I'd gotten more attention
Ah.
in the greater scheme of things. But then COVID came around.
And
so.
what are those what are those figurines called?
Oh,
I can't remember what
they're
they're called.
Funko Pops.
Funk. Yeah. Nice. This is great
And
because you're showing stuff on video, and people who are listening are like, "What's that?" And now they have to go to the YouTube channel and subscribe. So perfect, mailing it.
but the part of their company that I really admire is like the marketing segment. Because like they have done some really great marketing campaigns, especially with their MonsterVerse and their DC extended universe stuff. Like those are some impressive marketing campaigns, honestly. And like so, it would be an honor to just be able to support any one of those, any aspect of their company. But those are the parts that I really pay attention to whenever they have a new movie come out.
Yeah, cool. So I guess would you like consider yourself like a comic book person and like a I don't know, superhero nerd, so to speak? Is that kind of your area of fandom?
Absolutely not. The most I do is I watch like two comic book YouTubers on YouTube, and that's about the extent of my knowledge. All of my knowledge comes from them. So I'm like, I like the movies, but I can't say I've read a comic book in about 10 or 11 years. I'm sure they're great. It's just I'd rather look at the movies, and I can't keep all that paper in my house.
Yeah. I hear you. What are some of the movies that you're more into? Like are you into like specific like genres, or just like are there some like Warner Brothers specific or Warner Media specific things you enjoy?
I really like animated movies. I know it's not a genre, it's a medium. Well, it's a medium and a medium. So.
Sure.
I really like animated movies and breaking down how they actually kind of reflect our society, because as of really recently, if you kind of notice, mainstream animation has been super, super white. And yeah, hey everybody who watched this far, I'm one of those people who's concerned with social justice. So there's a warning, I'm going to start talking about it. So like, a lot of animation has been, okay. Sometimes you kind of freeze over there on me, Joe. So I'm like, oh boy. And then you came back, so that's good. Like a lot of animation it's super white, and they have definitely improved over the years. Like I said before, I have movie posters in my room. They're all animated. I have Moana, I have Kung Fu Panda, and I have my favorite movie, which is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. They're all animated, and there's such a scope of genres that you can do with animation. I know I mentioned mainstream ones just now, but there are also some really cool indie animations. Like look at Cartoon Saloon. If you have Apple TV Plus, go look at Wolfwalkers, because it's really good and it's really sad. It was like, so the more the more indie animation that comes to the forefront, the better it is for everybody. Because again, I like Disney, I like Warner Animation Group, but they're not the end all be all of animation. You really have to expand your scope, and you really have to look beyond there to find a bunch of diverse, interesting movies that can open your perspective.
Yeah, I used to watch some anime growing up. Some of the stuff was like kind of mainstream. Like I watched a lot of like Dragon Ball Z when I was a kid. Like I remember like 5 o'clock every weekday. Like gotta check out the new Dragon Ball Z episode. And so that was like a big thing for me growing up when I was younger. And then I watched I'm having trouble remembering the names of all the movies, but like the something about a maid, like the maid service, and like Totoro. Like I watched all those movies when I was a kid, and they still actually like hold like a really fun place in my heart. Whenever I see like someone who watches anime, they have like a Totoro backpack. I'm like, Totoro, like love Totoro, so cool. So I don't know if you were into that stuff as well, but I remember fondly that stuff.
Yeah, I will watch an anime movie before I watch an anime series, because I feel like, I mean, it's totally fine. It's just not my thing because they take like a little bit too long. I was like, look, I don't watch a whole bunch of television at first, so anything that has like 30 episodes, I'm like, all right, so maybe I'll finish it in like 2 or 3 years. So
yeah, that was the one thing I remember about Dragon Ball Z. It was like you have to watch like 10 episodes for like anything to like actually happen. Like it's like an episode would start with like one of the characters like powering up, and then it would end like with them finishing powering up, and you're like, nothing really like happened in this episode. Like,
I know, because someone actually mentioned that
and stuff.
on
But anyway, still enjoyed the show. We just talked about like anime for 10 minutes, which is great. I love talking about random stuff in the show. I want to come back a little bit to the like what the next like kind of year for you looks like in terms of 2021, because we talked a little bit about you maybe blogging a little less and maybe with higher quality this year, which I think is a really good move. And I think most audiences would take that trade-off, maybe a little less frequency and announcements or content, but maybe some higher quality content. I think a lot of audiences would appreciate that. What else does 2021 hold for you, do you think? Do you think it's you'll continue to do a little consulting here and there, continue to blog? Anything else that's kind of big on your calendar? I know with COVID stuff, most people have a lot of stuff paused, but anything else digital maybe you're thinking about this year?
Honestly, I would like to I want to reiterate that just because I'm writing, it's nothing you said. I just want to reiterate for the good people listening at home, well, please don't listen to the coffee shop. Please listen at your house where you can take your mask off. But I would just want to reiterate that all my blogging, just because I blogged once a week, it doesn't mean that it was bad quality. I mean, after all, I was in an article for Tech Target, and I actually won a fully paid conference trip because of my blog. And the funny thing is, yeah, if you've ever heard of Grace Hopper Convention.
Very good then.
Yeah. Have you heard of Grace Hopper Convention, Joe?
I haven't, but tell me about it.
Well, it's the world's biggest collection of female technologists, and it's mostly software oriented and like front end, which is still a very important part of technology. But they saw my hardware networking blog, and they liked me enough to give me a 4-day pass. I just had to get to Orlando, and this was in 2019, where we could still, get on airplanes and go places.
Yeah.
So 2021, I would like to do consulting full time. Just 2 or 3 companies a month. You pay me. I look at your user interface. I see what needs improvement. I look at your backend. I see what needs improvement. I help you migrate to a cloud, or I work with small businesses and I help you I guess I really can't help small businesses this year because it's COVID. So besides that, In theory, I can help you with your Juniper stuff, because even though I'm certified in Cisco, in Microsoft, and CompTIA, I'm working on my Juniper Junos certification, because a lot of vendors like that smaller, more a la carte system than what Cisco offers. No offense, Cisco. I love you. You're great. So I want to do consulting full time. And I just kind of want to stick to my smaller micro communities and build some more genuine relationships with people and just kind of help them out where I feel the need to.
When you talk about working a like full-time consulting this year, are you interested in like a full-time job, or continuing just consulting for multiple companies and maybe not working 40 hours a week and working fewer hours?
So I turned to consulting simply because I could not find a job in my field after college. And this is like networking. This is the biggest deal. So I turned to consulting out of necessity other than want. And at this point, I look at a 40-hour work week and I think, you know what? I'm good. I can still help people and probably make more money with freelance without having to work 40 hours a week somewhere. So if it comes along with a reasonably flexible company, because there are good companies out there who understand that the job it's not a replacement for an identity or personality. They understand that, hey, even though we have money to make and a business to run, you'd probably rather be somewhere else than sitting here for like 75% of your week. So if a company is open and reasonably flexible like that, I'm not against talking with them. I'm not against working for them. But I prefer consultancy, and where I build up a relationship with these larger companies where they can pay me a large flat fee straight up, so I can give more concentrated, appropriate help to a few companies as opposed to helping everybody everywhere all at once and wearing myself thin. And most importantly, giving bad service is something that I don't want to do. So 5 people paying me $2,000 is better than 20 people paying me, someone do the math here, I'm sorry, about $200.
Yeah, sure. I hear that. Cool. I think that's a good place to wrap up, I wish you the best of luck this year. Honestly, I don't think you need much luck. You sound like you're doing great. I know a lot of people in the WordPress space have kind of like turned to consulting, maybe because they couldn't find a full-time job, and it was like the best thing that ever happened to them because they're like, whoa, this is great. I can work when I want to. I can do the work I like, and I can still make good money doing it. So it's kind of the best of all of that. So I don't have any doubt that you'll continue to rock it this year. Why don't you tell folks here on the podcast where they can find you online, maybe links to your blog or social media, that kind of stuff?
Okay, I am on Twitter at runtcpip.com. If you want to follow me on LinkedIn, the URL, like the end part where you put the name, is LL Morgan. And just tell me that you come from the WordPress podcast, and I'll be happy to connect with you.
Yeah, cool. It's probably a good best practice for when you connect with someone on LinkedIn. I never send like a generic link. I'm not on LinkedIn very often, but like if I am going to request someone connection, I'll never just send a generic one. I'll add a note to that note section, be like, hey, here's how we know each other, just wanted to connect. And that usually I feel like is not just to make sure the connection happens, but it feels like a good thing to do, like just to bridge that gap of like, I'm not just some bot trying to connect with you. So yeah, thanks for that, Morgan. And last thing, Morgan, I ask our guests for is to ask our listeners here for a little iTunes review. So if you wouldn't mind asking the folks listening for a little iTunes review, I'd appreciate it.
Right. Okay. If you want to review the podcast on iTunes, it would definitely be appreciated.
Yes, there you go. Thank you. WPMRR.com/iTunes redirects you right there if you are on a Mac or Apple device. I read every review, so I will give you a big hug next time I see you, hopefully later this year, if you give us a review. And if you are a new listener to the show, we've got 100, 120, 130, something like that, old episodes in the hopper. Go ahead and binge some old episodes of the podcast. If you're looking to learn something specific, just go to WPMRR.com/podcast. We have a search bar right there, so you can search for pricing, and we'll give you all these episodes about pricing. And yeah, go ahead and up your game in that area. If you have questions for the show, just shoot them into yo at WPMRR.com, or you can find me on Twitter at Joseph H. Howard. That is it for this week on the pod. We will be back in your podcast players again next Tuesday. Morgan, thanks again for being on. It's been real.
Thank you for asking me to be here, Joe. I'm glad I took some time out of my day.
Excellent. See you, everybody.